Hey guys, just took about a week off for exams, and when I came back, I had over 30 new video responses and a boatload of comments to my 5 questions video. So it took about 4.5 hours just to go through all those responses and reply to everything, but it was time well spent. So thanks for the tremendous amount of feedback. 2 of the atheists who responded actually took my own questions and basically reversed them on me, so I'll take some time to address those. That was done by SwissTopper and CobraJones. Feel free to go check out their channel. Alright, let's get right to it.
Question 1. What evidence did it take for you to start believing in God? And secondly, what type of evidence would it take for you to believe in a different God? Such as Allah. What would it take to get you to convert to Islam?
Alright, now the reason that I'm a theist is because I just think theism better explains reality than does naturalism. Now, upon taking a closer look at my reasons for believing, I've formulated several deductive arguments. Now, there's been some debate over whether or not deductive arguments count as evidence or not. Now, I was going to make a whole video on this topic, but I think we can just address it really briefly here. Let's take a look at the most common example of a deductive argument. Be premise 1, all men are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates was a man. And that leads to the conclusion, therefore, Socrates was mortal. So you basically look at 2 facts about reality and draw a conclusion from that. If both premises are true, then the conclusion must also be true. So it's actually irrational to believe premise 1 and premise 2 are true and not to conclude that Socrates is mortal. Now, if you say a deductive argument is sound, then you're saying 2 things. 1, that the premises are true, and 2, that there's no logical fallacy present. So I believe that there are several sound deductive arguments that prove the existence of God. And the only way you can have a sound argument is if both premises are true, and that means there has to be really good evidence that leads you to believe that the premises are true. So if you have sound deductive arguments for God, then that means that there's really good evidence that God exists. I'm eventually going to make videos on my channel addressing all of the deductive arguments that I think are persuasive proof for God's existence. But so far I've made my way pretty thoroughly through the moral argument. You can feel free to check out my playlist and throw your hat into the discussion if you want. And if I was to disbelieve in God or accept some other kind of conclusion, then I'd have to be shown that the deductive arguments that I believe are sound are in fact not sound. Because, as I think I mentioned earlier, if you believe both premises are true and don't believe the conclusion, it's actually irrational. So there are several things that I could do to believe in a different religion. It wouldn't have to just be deductive arguments. It could be like a personal experience or impressive miracles or direct empirical evidence or something like that. I'd like to think that any reasonable standard of evidence would be able to persuade me. Alright, on to question 2.
Question 2. Is there anything that I could do that could possibly convince you that God doesn't exist? Like, would any argument I could make have the potential to persuade you? Secondly, is there anything a Hindu could do to convince you that Shiva exists? Like, would any argument that they could make persuade you?
Alright, so my answer to question 2 is pretty much the exact same as my answer to question 1. If the deductive arguments I think are sound are shown to be false, then I no longer hold my conclusion. And if you present some deductive arguments and show them to be sound for a different conclusion, then I'd have to accept that one to be true. Alright, question 3.
Question 3. If you realized that no gods existed, would you change your lifestyle and your morals? Secondly, if you realized that Buddhism was true, would you wish to attain enlightenment and nirvana?
Alright, my answer is kind of interesting to this one. Let me first clarify that Christians do not have a monopoly on morality. You can be moral or immoral regardless of what worldview you hold. But if my belief in God did change, and I no longer believed in God, then that would impact my behavior, primarily because I would no longer believe in objective morality. My moral philosophy would change to probably a mix between ethical egoism and moral nihilism. So if I only believed morality existed inside my head, then I wouldn't feel the need to refrain from things like premarital sex or drunkenness or cursing and stuff like that. In the eyes of the world, I'd probably still be a moral person. I wouldn't be a murderer or thief or anything like that, but it definitely would impact my behavior, at least in some way. And as for enlightenment, sure, why not? Alright, question 4.
Question 4. Have you ever met an atheist that lives their life in such a way that it's clear that they really don't believe in any gods? Meaning that they live their lives as if they were truly responsible for all their actions and know they can never be granted forgiveness or clemency from a higher being. Or Have you ever met a Mormon that lives their life in such a way that it's clear that they really believe in God, meaning that they live their life in an impressively kind, loving, or selfless way?
Well, I've definitely met people who it's clear they don't believe in God, but I don't think atheism or any other worldview is really connected to this idea of being responsible for your own actions. I don't think that's unique to any one particular worldview. But I can say that I've met atheists from all kinds of different moral philosophies and all kinds of different moral behaviors, from impressively kind to impressively selfish. Now, when it comes to Mormons, I'm sure there are also impressively kind and impressively selfish Mormons out there, but I haven't really had the experience of having a close friendship with a Mormon person. I've had him come to my house and argue with me a couple times, or met him in passing, or talked to him on YouTube, but that's really the extent of it. Alright, now question 5, I'm going to go ahead and have CobraJones ask it, because I kind of like the way he words it a little bit better. No offense.
Question number 5, how does, this is also a two-parter, 5 alpha, 5a, how does the bad Christians, how do the bad Christians affect your view on Christianity? How do the good atheists affect your view of atheism?
Yeah, good atheists have definitely impacted my life. Now, I'm not saying that a person's actions make their worldview true or false, but the fact of the matter is that good people do impact the way you think. They impact your life, and as such, they're going to impact a lot of aspects of your life. For example, if you have a mean atheist, a person who acts like a jerk to you, then they may be the smartest person in the world, and they may be right about all their arguments. But if they act like a jerk, then it's just less likely that you'll engage in dialogue with them. And when people fight you, it tends to become more of like an emotional argument rather than where you can actually learn from each other. When people are arguing, it tends to be less listening and more just trying to find out who's smarter than the other. And the conversations don't really go anywhere. Nobody benefits from it. So that being said, I've met several atheists who are very nice people. And I've had some great dialogues on YouTube. It's been a great chance to critically analyze my own view, critically analyze arguments from the opposing view, and make some friends along the way. Now, I do also think that the presence of bad atheists have, in many ways, although this is not really a rational point, have impacted my Christianity. For example, if you have somebody, let's say you make an argument, and then they respond with absolute terrible arguments. Instead, they're insulting your character and making fun of you and making appeals to ridicule, like lots of logical fallacies, and not using critical thinking to address your claims. Or if you see intelligent people able to really engage in an intelligent dialogue with you, but then seemingly when they present an argument that supports their conclusion are unable to see obvious flaws or critically analyze their own point of view, it tends to reinforce your own belief. It makes their view look ridiculous, and as such, it's hard to accept a viewpoint if it comes off as ridiculous. A good example of this would be showing how bad Christians do the same kind of thing. Like Kent Hovind, for example. He just does blatant lies, and people who are on the Christian side seem to just fail to understand atheistic arguments. Or if you hear something like Pascal's wager or a Christian arguing for blind faith, all these things make Christianity itself look absolutely ridiculous. So if something looks ridiculous, then it really is hard to take it seriously, nonetheless be persuaded to agree with it. So even though I don't think it's the most rational reason in the world, I do think that people who present bad arguments or don't represent their viewpoint very well can end up reinforcing a person's beliefs. So remember, God loves you, and so do I.